One night, Henry was taking the flying Kipper. He ran smoothly, enjoying the night air. Oh, this is the life, he thought grandly. Now I know why Gordon likes taking the express so much, though I could probably pull both at once and not have any trouble. I'm sorry to say that after a long time without an accident while taking the Kipper, Henry had gotten a little conceited. He pulled into a station to drop off some of his load before going on. Boko the Diesel was in a siding nearby.
I hear the rails are very icy out in the part of the line you'll be traveling.
Boko said gravely.
An engine might come off with a heavy load like yours.
Henry scoffed. Oh, thank you, Boko, but I can manage. Besides, I certainly don't need help from an engine who can't find his own fuel tankers. Goodbye. And the big engine pulled away with his long train. Boko frowned. He hated being reminded of the time he couldn't find the special tanker of rocket fuel he had to deliver to the docks.
That engine's head towards trouble,
he murmured. Meanwhile, Henry was going along splendidly. His fire was burning fiercely because of his heavy load, and he felt very pleased with himself. I showed that buzzy Diesel. Fancy me needing advice to pull the Kipper. Ha! Suddenly, his driver spotted a sharp bend in the track.
Whoa, Henry, slow down!
But Henry didn't hear his driver until it was too late. He applied his brakes, but as Boko had foretold, the rails were icy and his brakes did no good. At full speed, Henry crashed off of the rails. Oh no! He cried. There was an awful noise as Henry crashed into the tree. When Henry opened his eyes, he was being lifted onto a flatbed. Henry felt terrible. It was the Fat Controller. Yes, the damage is worse than we thought. We'll have to send you to crew again, Henry. They'll do a fine job of fixing you there.
Don't worry, Henry.
Thomas said kindly.
You'll be back again before you know it.
Crew, Henry murmured. Then Thomas and Arthur cuddled up to him and pulled him away. A steam engine? What's he doing here? Henry opened his eyes. A strange sight greeted him. He was in a large shed which was crawling with diesels. This doesn't look like crew, he thought. Then he noticed the people surrounding him.
Yeah, I don't know, Max. We didn't order any. We never do. Besides, this one looks like he's been through a war and back.
One of the men looked all over Henry.
He's got no papers. What do you think?
He must be meant for scrap. I'll get one of the diesels to take him tomorrow. Let the poor thing rest tonight. One of the men put a sign on Henry with the word scrap written on it. Henry gasped, realizing this was all a terrible mistake. Scrap? I'm not meant for scrap, he wheezed. But the men were already walking away. He tried to blow his whistle, but without his driver he couldn't. Henry was all alone. Where am I, he thought. Where could I be? Then, Henry saw a diesel moving towards him. He seemed faintly familiar, like someone he should know. Suddenly, it clicked into place. Spamcan? Is that you?
Well, Henry. Ha ha, what a surprise. Here I am on my way to Sodor to replace you while you're being repaired, and I find you here?
Suddenly, he noticed Henry's sign.
Scrap. Well, they didn't tell me about that. I'm glad they finally decided to get around to it. Hey, I must be going to Sodor for good then. Ha ha ha.
Henry gasped, realizing he was on Spamcan's railway, a dark place that the Sudrian engines referred to as the other railway. No, I meant to be a crew to be repaired. It's all a big mistake. They couldn't find my papers, so they think I meant for... oh, never mind. Please tell them. They wouldn't believe me, Spamcan.
Grrr! You know very well that I hate that name. It was that stupid single man who first called me that just because I broke down. Grrr! But, no, I don't think I will help you. This is my one chance to leave this rotten railway for good, and I'm sorry, Henry. It's too good of a chance to miss.
The diesel paused.
Funny how the tables have turned, eh? Last time we met, I was sent away in disgrace. and you were the conquering hero. Funny how things change, eh, Henry? Now, if you'll excuse me...
And he pulled away. Before Henry could even think, another diesel rolled towards him, but this one Henry knew all too well.
Well, Henry, imagine seeing you here.
Diesel oiled. Please, Henry gasped. Diesel, you have to help me. You know what they do to steam engines on this railway. Diesel considered.
I wish I could, but I am very, very busy. Perhaps another time.
And he rolled away. Henry was horrified. He hadn't exactly expected Diesel or Spamcan to be friendly, but he hadn't expected them to refuse to help either. What am I going to do? He whispered in despair. Then he saw two diesels rolling towards him out of the shadows. Meanwhile on Sodor, Spamcan was having a wonderful time. He behaved beautifully on all his jobs and didn't have a single accident. Sir Topham had commended him. Perhaps I was wrong about you, D199. You may have a place on my railway after all.
Thank you, sir.
The steam engines, however, thought otherwise. Spamcan was horrible to them any chance he got. He was even rude to Boko, Mavis, and Daisy.
I know your kind.
He would growl.
Steam lovers, the lot of you. There's no room for your type on my railway. You would all be shunned.
How rude, Mavis said. Oh my gracious, Daisy gasped.
Something has to be done about him.
Boko muttered. Worst of all, after work in the evening, Spamcan would tell the engines they would never see Henry again.
You'll never see him again.
Nobody believed this at first, but as the days passed and Henry's return date went by without a sign of the big green engine, everybody wasn't quite so sure anymore. The fat controller started to worry too, but still, the railway had to go on. One night at Knapford Station, he told Spamcan he could take the flying Kipper. Just this once. Spamcan ignored the last part of the sentence and set out for the docks.
I'm really doing it. I'm taking Henry's place. Ha ha!
He pulled into the dockyards, coupled up to the flying Kipper, and set out, feeling very triumphant.
I always told 7101 that any railway could be taken over, but that stupid steam lover didn't listen to me. Ha! He could only see me now pulling Henry's train like a pro.
Unlike what he would like to imagine, Spamcan was doing a horrible job. He hated the smell of the fish and was far too hasty,
Ah, this stinks.
dropping his cars off at the wrong stops and forgetting others. Later, he was on his way back to Knapford Station, with half of his train undelivered, when suddenly there was a loud sound and his brakes started leaking on.
Ah, grease and oil.
He yelled.
This hasn't happened to me in weeks. Why does it have to happen now?
Slowly but surely, Spamcan came to a grinding, total stop.
Busted brakes. Why did this have to happen?
Suddenly, he saw a steam engine heading towards him out of the darkness.
Great. A useless steamer to make fun of me. How could this get any... What the... Henry!
Henry pulled up in front of him. He was a completely different-looking engine from the badly damaged, trembling wreck that had arrived on Spamcan's railway. Shiny and looking just like new, he looked very amused as he eyed Spamcan. Well, 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 what have we here? He asked. This does seem familiar. As I recall, you were pulling the Limited at the time? I had a failed regulator, and you had your brake problem like you do now? I am surprised.
Henry, how did you? You were meant for scrap.
Well, as it turns out, not all diesels are like you. Some kind ones came over to me after you left, and their drivers looked all over me. As it was, they found my papers in my cab. No wonder I got sent to your railway by mistake. Then I was sent where I was originally supposed to go. It seems I've come in the nick of time, too. He chortled and coupled up to both Spamcan and his train. Just like old times, eh, Spamcan?
Bah!
After delivering the rest of the Kipper to the right places, Henry pulled into Knapford, Spamcan growling and muttering behind him. Some of the other engines were at Knapford as well, and when they saw Henry, they cheered and whistled in surprise. Henry!
We thought you were meant for scrap. Welcome home, Henry.
What happened, Henry? Henry smiled. It's a very long story, which I'll be glad to tell you all later. Oh, Boko?
Yes, Henry.
Thank you so much for being such a helpful engine. I really should have listened to you. I'm sorry. Boko seems surprised.
You're welcome, Henry. But what has that got to do with anything?
Believe me, Boko, it's got everything to do with anything. Boko smiled.
I see. Welcome home, Henry.
Yes, indeed, came a familiar voice. The fat controller walked across the platform towards Henry, who looked very surprised. Sir, how do you always know when to come? Never you mind. Well, Henry, I heard what happened, and I'm sorry you had to go through such a terrible ordeal. Next time I will not have a porter take care of your papers.
Whoa, sorry.
The fat controller chuckled, then turned his attentions to Spamcan. As for you, I have heard all about what you have said and done to my engines. You might have become a really useful engine, but I see I cannot change who you really are. I will write to your controller and send you back to your own railway, and I will not invite you here again. Spamcan groaned.
Yes, sir.
Henry laughed. Well, the tables have turned. Isn't that what you said?
Bah!
Spluttered Spamcan, then fell silent for the first time in his life.